Hey folks, welcome back to the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church YouTube Bible study. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest here at Holy Comforter. You can see I'm also dressed like a normal person today. I've been with some of our youth on their local mission trip, so I'm wearing civilian clothes, if you will. Today we're going to be looking at the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 1 through 21. We have sort of taken part of this Gospel of John and put it into the year in which we are reading Mark. It kind of fleshes Mark out a little bit more. And this is the story of the feeding of the multitude, the feeding of the 5,000. Sort of kind of the story, right? The people are out there, they're with Jesus, they're sort of struck by his teaching, they're awed by him, and you know, his disciples are like, hey, Jesus, it's like getting late, bud, like we're hungry. Jesus says, well, you know, you feed them. And he goes, you know, where are we going to get all that food? Like, it would cost us 6 months' wages to buy enough food for all these people. One of his disciples, Andrew, says, well, hey, there's a little boy here. He's got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus says, well, bring it on up. And Jesus prays over it. He breaks it, and then he gives it. And that then feeds the whole people, the whole crowd. It's a really meaningful story for Episcopalians. It's got that fourfold action we always talk about in the Holy Eucharist, that we take, we bless, we break, and we give. So there are lots of things sort of running around in our mind as we read the story. I think there are 2 interpretations of this miracle. One is that it was just that, a miracle, in that Jesus made more food when there was no food. The second interpretation is that everybody had a little bit of food in their pocket or their bag or whatever, and they saw this boy and his generosity, his willingness to share, and then from that they were inspired also to share and to give, and from that there was an abundance, and if we all sort of just opened up our hearts and were inspired to generosity, there would be more than enough. And that the miracle then is actually just the sharing. I think both of those could be true. I think both of those would be amazing and fine interpretations. Part for me is that I feel that is missing the forest for the trees. And that I think we need to even zoom back even further and ask ourselves, like, well, what else does this story sound like? And of course, this is reminiscent of the manna in the wilderness, of this bread from heaven being rained down every night for the Israelites as they're wandering through the wilderness. And that is the food from God that sustains them on their journey throughout the wilderness. So I think almost like asking ourselves, how did this miracle take place, almost cheapens it a little bit. I think rather we should be sort of awed by this, and that however it happened, however it came about, it is holy and glorious, and that the real point of this is to feed those who are hungry, to provide sustenance, to give manna in the wilderness. And so that's kind of where I am in thinking about the story. So, and I think it's a good lesson then for all of us. I think a lot of times in our Christian life, especially in the 21st century, in which we are so data-driven, in which we want to know the precise answer and then break it down in a spreadsheet. You know, think of like even sports nowadays. I mean, gosh, we like do these replays on these, you know, plays, and like, you know, was the ball, like, did it make it a quarter of an inch over the line? Like, who cares, right? I mean, the precision of today's life, I think, can be a little brutal and nauseating. And so I think it's good to take a step back and ask ourselves, like, what's the whole gist of this? What's the point of this? And I think the point is that God is providing food for God's people. And to me, like, that's the answer. And that's the mystery of it. I said in a Bible study recently that I've learned much more about God from poets than I have from theologians. And that's really true, because I think poetry and these stories like this that are so mysterious, They invite us into deeper contemplation rather than just this like telling us as it is. So I invite you to open up, to think about this story, the feeding of the 5,000, not in so much how Jesus did, but why did Jesus do that? And then see for yourselves that God also wishes to feed you in your own journey in this life with God. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday as we hear this from John chapter 6.